said a couple times in the streams over the last months that this could be like the greatest year for space engineers ever.
In November 2015, Keen Software House did something many players thought they never could do. They added fully realised planets to Space Engineers. Now in 2022, we might be on the cusp of an even bigger breakthrough. Keen Software House, the developers of Space Engineers, have recently done 2 live streams where they talk about the future of the game. One of them was when they streamed on the release date of Warfare 2, and whilst the developers were keeping details of future updates very close to their chest, they did let slip a few things of what might be coming soon. The second stream focused on the game's engine, and in it they showed the most exciting features I've ever seen for the game. Both live streams will be linked in the description, along with a blog post which will also be referenced later in the video. Now I'm going to split up everything they've mentioned into 4 distinct categories, starting with... Later this year, we are receiving a new update which the devs have referred to as the community update. The aim of this update is to add many things players have requested over the years to the game. We know for definite, based on the live stream, that we're receiving a T-shaped conveyor junction, and on his blog, Marek Rosa, the CEO of Keen Software House, also said that we're getting rounded windows blocks as seen here, and everything included in this update will be free. From the examples you've seen here, it sounds like the update will mainly focus on adding new blocks and some quality of life improvements, and won't be such a large overhaul like Warfare 2 was. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't be excited for this update, as aside from a brief outline and a couple of blocks, we have absolutely no idea what else is being added. It was mentioned many times during the livestream that they've taken ideas for new blocks and features from their feedback portal, which I've linked below. Let's have a quick look at it. So this is the Space Engineers feedback portal. There's one page for PC and one page for Xbox. As the games are basically the same, you don't really need to worry about the differences between the two. So if you wanted to, you could go through all the things on here, you could upvote them, you could see what features other people are requesting and then get them added to the game. But what I'm more interested in is if you go to statuses, you can see what features are planned and what are in progress. So if you go to in progress, you can see there's a couple of features here. There's a modding one that we're not really bothered about. Pirate bases, let's see what this is. So this suggestion is asking to add pirate bases to all the starts, not just the easy starts, which is quite interesting. You can also go to planned. You see there's 2 features here that are planned, although it looks like this one's been planned for 3 years, so... And then you've also got considered features. It looks like lots of people agree with me about adding coloured icons to the game, and there are so many other suggestions being considered. So please, if you like the look of any of the features on this list, you need to go to this feedback portal and upvote them, otherwise they might not get added to the game. Additional things we know that are on the devs' radar are allowing you to project and world up subgrids for the more advanced engineers among you, whether or not shields should be added to the game, which is something that a lot of players are both for and against. Personally, I'm against, but do you guys want the shields in the game? Let me know. And additions to planets, although they didn't really go into detail of what these could be. So, what features would you like most to see in the next update for Space Engineers? NPCs do kind of exist already in Space Engineers, but they don't really do much. And from the comments on my top mods video, I know better NPCs is something a lot of you want. But don't worry, Keen is aware of this, and it seems that they are working on it right now.
But I think it needs to be done like in a specific way that is specific for space engineers, and because in space engineers you can build things, so I think it would be much better if you can actually build, you know, your friends or NPCs.
Yeah.
So that's in a very short where we are looking.
So this is very exciting. When I was thinking of the NPCs Keen was add, I was thinking of the things like mods add, where they had trading ships and pirates and stuff like that. But from this, it sounds like the devs are planning on adding NPCs that work with the player and build and explore and all these kind of things. Imagine flying a fleet of ships around the planet with your AI buddies, or having a shipyard that builds ships with all the AI drones welding for you. Keen's philosophy always has been that if they want to add something, then make sure it's done properly. This is the main reason water isn't currently in the game. That makes me very excited of how and when Keen add NPCs to the game. Just to add to this, later in the stream, when talking about the autocannon, one of the devs says this.
We have the autocannon. The autocannon is, of course, you know, when you have miniguns, when you have an assault cannon, you need something, you know, in between to mostly deal with small grids and, you know, characters or, well, I'm not going to say anything other than that, but mostly small grids and characters. There may be other uses for this in the future. Who knows? I'm not gonna say anything about that.
This sounds to me like NPCs are actually going to physically be in the world like the player is. Maybe a little robotic engineer or something like that. Now, we don't know when this will be added to the game, but the community manager for Space Engineers said this could be the greatest year for Space Engineers ever, so I'm guessing this will be sooner rather than later. I'd just like to let you guys know, to make this video, I had to watch a 4.5-hour livestream twice and a 2-hour water livestream. So please, if you could like and subscribe if you appreciate the 11 hours of my life I lost. And also I have a Discord and Patreon if you'd like to support me. The lack of endgame content and exploration in Space Engineers is my personal gripe with the game. There's no reason to build a jump drive and travel to other planets as there's nothing you need from them, nor is there anything there to find. Again, this is something Keen are acutely aware of and are looking to address this issue, but aside from them saying that, we don't really know what they're going to do. If I had to guess, this would probably tie in with the implementation of NPCs, as with friendly NPCs comes neutral NPCs and hostile ones. In an ideal world, I'd like NPCs, and bear in mind this is on quotes on my script, quests for you to do. These quests would take you to curated encounters like pirate bases or colony ships or something like that you'd have to deal with. I personally want something that's a bit more in depth than random crash ships or pirate bases, as the game already has this and mods already add this, and it's a bit basic, let's be honest. As for endgame content, again, we really don't know anything about this, but I could take a couple of guesses. First of all, the game needs to have some sort of higher tier thrusters, gyros and reactors, etc., but also a reason to use them. Whether this is achieved by adding new blocks or some kind of upgrade module for thrusters, I would suggest that these upgrades are locked behind exploration and the quests I mentioned earlier. As exploration and questing gets more difficult, you would be able to build larger and more powerful ships to accommodate this. This would also be important for console players who are the main market for space engineers, as they can't place thousands of thrusters and gyros on their ships as they are limited by the smaller PCU limit. This would all lead to some kind of final encounter with a you win scenario. Although what this would entail, I have no idea. Like most people, my playthroughs of Space Engineers end when I get bored, so having something to work towards and give the player to goal to reach would be fantastic. So, water. Marek Rosa, the CEO of Keen Software House, did a live stream the other day where they spoke about Keen Software's proprietary engine called V-Rage, but specifically V-Rage 3, and the presentation focused on the addition of water to the engine. As mentioned previously, Keen's philosophy is that if they're going to add something, they're going to make sure it's done properly, and this presentation really proved that. I won't go through everything, I suggest you watch the stream if you want to see that, but the basic gist is they're adding water that flows, reacts to impacts, can be collected and moved, and basically just everything real life water does, on a planetary scale. To compare, the water mod for Space Engineers only adds a static layer of water that is set at a certain height around the planet. The V-Rage implementation will add water that reacts dynamically, water that you can dam off and divert, that you can crash into and cause a tsunami at your enemy's bases, or that you can completely drain until there's nothing left. Now, this is all very exciting, but there is one big issue. Everything I've just mentioned is for the V-Rage 3 engine, and Space Engineers is currently on V-Rage 2. During the stream it was mentioned that it'd be difficult, not impossible, to add this to Space Engineers, as it's currently on their older engine, and I take a guess that this is because V-Rage 3 is specifically designed to handle fluids and V-Rage 2 isn't. With the recent copyright of the name Roman Engineers by Keen Software House, and that Romans were quite famous for using aqueducts to transport water around, I suggest Keen is probably working on a game at the moment to take advantage of these new water physics. So, I guess that's it then. No water in Space Engineers. Well, games do get sequels. Space Engineers is the game that put Keen Software House on the map, and I'd say a sequel to the game is inevitable, especially as they've already started development on a new engine that includes features that players would definitely want and pay for. Now, Space Engineers 2 is probably a couple of years away. The game only recently came out on Xbox, and it's still receiving updates and DLCs. But the talk of Endgame got me thinking, if you could complete Space Engineers, then wouldn't the game itself be complete? So I suggest to you, when Space Engineers gets an update that includes Endgame content, just keep in the back of your mind what happens next. In the description of this video I'm going to include timestamps of everything I've referenced here. This took a lot of time to put together for this video, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. Lastly, if there's any feature or block that you'd like to see added to Space Engineers, I'd love to hear about it.